アニメ兄貴です。ようこそ、おかまたち、おたとも。Welcome back, minasan. Buckle up, this one's gonna be rough. Feel free to use the chapters to hop around sections that apply to you, whether you're reviewing, skipping ahead, skipping backwards, and as always, どうでもいい. I don't care what you do as long as you're getting out there and making no excuses for why you don't speak Japanese yet. アニメ兄貴はお前を応援してるよ。頑張れ. So first, what did I think of the episode? Fantastic in short, but boy was it a roller coaster. てか, the animation はなんだよ。めちゃくちゃだぜ。It was just so jarring. I don't even know what to make of it, but yeah, kudos to them for being able to give me something fresh. I've been out of the game for a hot minute, so if anyone else is already out there doing this, obviously I don't know about it, so damare. Did I mention homeboy Ling Ling was the same voice actor as Tanjiro from Demon Slayer? Dope, bro, dope. I can't help but imagine Tanjiro trapped in Nice's body. I think it's enhancing the experience for me. Definitely super biased now though, because Demon Slayer, mecha suki da ze, saiko. Real quick though, what is this? I didn't say anything. If you were thinking it, that's on you. Xiao is back up in this B. Things are getting trippy, people are dying, not dying, real life is glitching, social commentary going on about elite society controlling narratives and how what you see is fabricated. This episode is going deep in the social commentary. Don't know where to lead, but it captured my interest at least. Now, Ling Ling his secret's out. People aren't dumb enough to believe that Superman without glasses is Clark Kent. So the people that knew him well know that he don't punch the same, he don't sling that D the same. Everyone's on to him. Some people really like it, some people really don't. Nice had a homie that was trying to hit him up and he was like trying to get way too close. But it's 2025, so it doesn't even matter, right? I mean, love is love. But Ling Ling don't play that game because he's living his best fantasy right now with his homegirl all up in his arms. He gets her everything she wants and she still dits up out of there anyway. Whatever, I guess, maybe. She was dead anyway, right? But now she's back. I don't know. We lose her twice, I guess. Nice going. Nice. That homeboy that attacked the wedding, his name that I don't remember. He was a forgettable character for the most part. I'll put him up here though. He runs up into the set with the strength of 10 generic backstories and character development talking about if I can't have her, no one can. Like every healthy relationship ever. It's staged, so that makes it better in the end, I guess. Then his backstory drops like a villain about to die in Demon Slayer, so you can feel for him or something, I think. I usually just tune that stuff out as mandatory elements of a good show. I know I won't relate to it anyway, but I guess if I had to judge him, his motivations are enough to make me not be irritated by the plot, but they're in no way believable in the universe that I live in. I'm still holding out judgment on whether they make good sense in the universe that they're creating. I don't understand the mechanics of it all that well yet. We're still somewhat fresh in the show. In the final act of the episode, the gears turn up and it goes amazing 2D animation again. Props to the animators here. They really delivered. Honestly, even the 3D stuff has been great up until now, but they turn up that dial in the final act and it's pure spectacle. Just real good stuff. I'm all about it. The episode wraps up. Ling Ling essentially cries about not being able to be Mr. Stereo Girl anymore because she up out of there, and he hooks her up with her second grand exit. Roll credits. Yo, whenever a studio takes the time to newly animate their endings, it always makes me feel like they've got an overarching vision and that they aren't just pushing items out in the production mill. So again, very, very nicely done by the studios here. I'm happy about how this episode played out. It was a solid 9 out of 10 for me. So for this episode, there was a very big emphasis on relationships, love, marriage. So a lot of the words that I'm going to pick out this time around are going to be in that schema to sort of make them easier to remember. And when you look back at the episode or if you're reviewing your items, definitely augment this with your own words though. Go study on your own, find other words that you think are related. And remember, don't take on too much at once because then you'll just overwhelm yourself. You still want to be able to enjoy the process and hopefully enjoy the anime that you're watching. So I pulled these words and phrases out and we'll hop on them from top to bottom. But here's the list of all the words. And first word we're getting into is probably one of the most basic. They do get progressively harder as we go through. If you're familiar with the JLPT scale, we're going to be going from 5 all the way down to 1 in this case. But the first word that is, I think, very important that we should focus on here, it's namae.
そういえば名前聞いてなかった。名前聞いてなかった。名前。
Namae, the kanji for that here. And here's your hiragana, na, and this character is mae. So we're going to be getting into some radicals here. They're very useful for trying to break down kanji that you've never seen before. They can also be very misleading. So again, this is just going to become a familiarity game. You're just going to have to kind of get used to it. But one of the first things that we're picking out on the left side here, the left character for na, this is going to come up a lot, I promise you. So better learn it now, get used to it at least. This top half character here, this is the character for evening. So if you see that, there's a good chance that it has something to do with evening. It may or may not, but there is a good chance that it has something to do with evening here. If you're familiar with katakana, which I do recommend you learn your hiragana and katakana, super important, super useful, at least that fundamental writing system. If you learn the two of those, you'll be in good shape, and it'll make it a lot easier to see some of the patterns that'll show up in some of these characters. This, in this case, looks a lot like the katakana ta. So if you know how to write that and you see this, it'll help you remember how to write this character even. So you've got ta, and then underneath that, this is the character for mouth, which looks like a mouth. Over on the other character for mae, you have a character that you've seen before, and this is going to keep happening. The stuff that we've seen before is going to continue to show up in the new things that we're going to learn, and you'll just continue building on that experience. So we saw in the last episode, this character was in Xiao Yechin's name. It was the yue, which again is Chinese. In this case, in Japanese, it's going to be suki. But this means moon, right? So we learned that last time. It means moon. But in kanji, it can also be a radical. Like I said, we're getting into radicals here. This radical, when you see it show up in part of a character, it oftentimes actually means like flesh, like human flesh or meat. So we're going to put that here too, flesh. And you should remember that because it shows up in a ton of characters, even some of the ones that we're going to be covering today, where you're talking about body parts, you're talking about human anatomy, you're talking about human flesh. So moon, yes, that's exactly what it looks like. It comes from the character for meat, and it became simplified to sort of look like the character for moon over time. And then this other part here, this is the character for, the radical if you see it. It's for knife. And this also looks a little bit like a hiragana and a katakana character. So something that you can use to help you remember some of these characters. So the next one we're going to be getting into is marriage. Again, all part of the theme of this episode. So marriage in Japanese is kekkon.
結婚よりもいいシナリオだと思っただけで結婚よりも結婚
And what do you know? Something that we've seen before. Let me write your hiragana here really quick, and then your romaji. So the romaji here, kekkon, if you didn't know, just in case, sort of the repeating consonant there is represented by that small tsu. Just a side note for those of you that are learning what that means in hiragana. So kekkon, again, if we broke this character down, we've got some pretty interesting radicals that are worth learning, and they may or may not help you understand other characters, but you'll at least learn how to write other characters. So in this character, the first character here, we actually have the character for thread. The threads that you use to put together clothes or something like that. That's the left half of the character. Now the right half, this is also very common to see. This is the character for good fortune. So you've got sort of the threads of good fortune, right? Now, the second character, I'm sure you guys remember this one from the last episode. Very important, very common as a radical and as a character to see in Japanese. This is the character for bad fortune. And then right next to that, you've got the character for confusion. So altogether, you have the threads of good fortune become the bad fortune and confusion, which means marriage. Marriage is kekkon. Obviously, I'm joking. Bad fortune, this actually means women. So if you remember from the first episode, that's the character for women. And so you have women combined with, this does actually mean confusion, but it can also mean dusk. And if you take a look at this radical down here, this one is the character for sun in Japanese, and that's a very common radical that's going to show up. You've got sun and moon. We saw forest, the radical for a tree. We saw that one pop up a bunch. Now we have thread. We're coming up with a bunch of radicals that we're going to see pop up in characters over time pretty regularly. So the next character we're going to be taking a look at, this one is very specific to all of Xiaoyechin's desires. We've got jiyū, which is freedom. Your hiragana, and then your nomaji. So jiyū, if you remember again from the first episode, this character Ji, that is the character for self. Again, you hear Ji, you're probably going to be thinking something that has to do with the individual, the person, the self. Yu is actually the character for reason. And so this is something that Xiaoyechin is saying she wants the entire show. She wants freedom. I want my jiyū, right? So moving up the scale of difficulty, the next character we're running into is hitsuyō. Hitsuyō, pulling that out here. Hitsuyō is written like this. So your hiragana and then your romaji. A very important radical and a very important character to remember in Japanese. This is going to come up a lot, and we're going to see it come up a bunch in this episode because of how much it deals with emotions and the relationships of people and the marital status and all of that. You have this component of the hitsu character, and this right here in Japanese is the character for heart. So this is kokoro, and kokoro means heart, right? So here's an English expression that you're probably familiar with. Cross my heart, hope to die, blah, 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 right? So if you cross this heart, you've got hitsu, which means certain or definite. Because when you cross your heart, hope to die, you're saying you're not lying, 100% sure, 100% factual. Hitsu, crossed heart, definite fact. Certain, definite. From heart to crossed heart is one of the ways that I remember that character. This one over here on the right side, yo, that is very poorly written. At the top there, you can see what is essentially the character for west in Japanese, which is nishi. Doesn't look exactly the same, and this can happen a lot when you take a character and sort of put it in another character, or you have a radical for a character. Nishi means west in Japanese. And then underneath it, once again, like I promised, you've got the character for woman. So you have a West woman, or a Western woman, because there is an air of self-importance to Western women. And so you have certain definite sort of West woman. This character by itself actually does mean necessary. So you have Western woman because Western women are self-important. The meaning of that character combined is important. So you put them together, and you've got necessary. So something that is definitely important is necessary. This next one I think is actually really important, especially if you live in the United States and you see people run around with Asian tattoos on their body. But also, you hear this pop up a lot in anime. Kawaii. This is a very, very important word because of how much you're going to hear it.
こんな女神やめてやる
これが本当のシャオユエチン。なんかとにかく可愛すぎるだろ
何が理想のカップルよ
可愛すぎるだろ可愛すぎる可愛すぎる
Kawaii. Kawaii means cute, right? Which you probably already knew, but now you know how to write it and you know what it looks like. If you break this down into its individual components though, you've got this character, which means can, to be able to or something, but it also means like to be in favor of something. It means sort of acceptable, satisfactory. And then the next character, very important. Next time you see somebody running around with this character, make sure it's written correctly. And if it's not, you can laugh with me. This is the character for love. And you can see here, once again, right there, you've got the character for heart in it, which is going to happen a lot when you're dealing with anything that has to do with emotions. Just want to take a second to write out those two characters there. You've got the heart inside of love, right? So, like we mentioned before, a lot of the things that have to do with emotion, they're going to have the heart character in there. And then right underneath that, so this is heart. And then right underneath that, you have another very important character that we've already seen show up once. This is the character for winter. So when you see this, now they're a radical for winter, but when you see it, think winter. And we're going to refer to it as the winter radical. So the second component of this statement that's being said, and an important grammar feature, unfortunately, that we're going to have to learn. It's a little bit advanced, but it is very important, and I promise you don't need to think of it as grammar, just think of it as this is what it means. Sugiru. And this is sugiru. It means surplus or excessive. It can also mean to pass through. So I'm going to put that here too, just sort of in parentheses. We're not going to be using this necessarily in this explanation, but if you see that in other characters, it could potentially mean to like pass through something. Or if you hear it in other contexts, it might actually mean that something is being passed through or it is passing through something. But in this context here, when you hear it typically with like an adjective or even a verb conjugated, it means something in excess or in surplus. So if you hear kawaii sugiru, it means like excessively cute. So excessive. Whenever you hear sugiru, think excessive. So next character we're getting on to, we're going up the difficulty again, but this one is a very important one. It fits right in this schema, so it's pretty appropriate.
あれって夢だったのかあれって夢だったのか夢だったのか夢
Yume. Now this character means to dream, and look at that. Another radical that we're getting pretty familiar with seeing now again. And also, for those of you that are familiar with hiragana and katakana, there's our ta again. So, yume in hiragana, romaji. Now, this one's easy. It just means dream. So here's a good one. They talk about in the show how they're actually trying to get these people to marry. They're trying to get Lin Ling and Xia Yeqing to be married because that's what the fans want. So the word for like a married couple is fūfu.
あなたたちはカップルから夫婦へと夫婦へと夫婦
So this one's interesting. You've got this character that we've seen before, right? This is the character for person. If we did that, this is the character for big. And remember that. Big, something excessive, not the same as sugiru, but like something large, right? So you have the character now for big. Well, if you have a big person and you put a hat on him, that's a man. So you've got the character for man. In this case, it's also husband. And that's typically how you see it used. It's the character for husband. Now this next character is, you can probably guess just by looking at that section there. The other component that you don't know, this is the character for broom. How appropriate, right? If you stick this guy on there, which is a character we already know, character for woman, you have the character for wife. Because what is a woman with a broom? For a husband specifically. That's a good wife. If you're not quite married yet though, and you just want to talk about, you know, the early stages of development of your relationship, you can talk about being just a regular old
あなたたちはカップルから夫婦へとカップルからカップル
kappuru. That's an easy one, but still a very important word to know. And it is a proper loan word that you can use. You can speak it just the way you hear it, kappuru, and that means couple. Everyone understands it. Totally easy word to go with. So when you like somebody, how do you tell them that you like them? How do you tell them that you really like them? Or how do you say that you really like something? Well, you talk about it as if it comes from the heart, right? And so we know heart from earlier, that's kokoro. So you've got the character for heart, kokoro. And then you want to say like from the heart, right? That's kokoro kara. So kokoro kara means from the heart. And then the word for to like is suki. And that's written this way. Suki. That is suki. Kokoro kara suki. Kokoro kara suki.
じゃあ心からナイスを好きだと思ったことは心からナイスを好き
If you broke this character down, again, you've got radicals that we recognize. So that's the one for woman. We already know that. Now this next one, also very useful, and this is a standalone character in Japanese too. This is the character ko for child. You've got women and children, something that's precious, right? If something's precious, you want to take care of it, you probably care for it, you probably like it, right? So the character for to like something is women and children, or for all y'all hentayaro out there, a woman child or a child woman is why you like them. Whatever helps you remember it. I'm trying my best to not jump into any grammar because I do believe that you can get very far without picking up or really deeply studying grammar. You will at some point need to study it, right? But I think it's more important that you just get a feel for the language, that you start picking up some of the easy words and just start using it. But it also doesn't hurt that once you start using it and you start getting familiar with some of the way the words are formed and you're starting to pick apart patterns, you start realizing, well, there are patterns in the way that the grammar is used. And maybe that's a good point to step in and ask or do some research into, well, what do some of these different verb forms mean, or how are some of these things being used? I think in that sense, look up the grammar. It definitely helps. You've got an adult brain, you can hop on Google or you can hop in a dictionary and figure out how to enhance your learning experience by understanding some of the intricacies of how the words are used. But at the end of the day, you don't want to start by just learning grammar. You want to learn how to say things and then maybe reverse engineer that into its baser pieces. So this expression here,
来ないで来ないで
we've got a character that we've seen before. So once again, building upon our older understanding and things that we've learned in the past, you have the character for, if you remember where that's from. Again, check out episode 1 if you haven't, but if you remember this one, you've got senkyaku bandai. This is the dai from senkyaku bandai. It is the character for arrivals or to come. So to arrive at a place or to come to a place. Konaide. So it can also be read as ko in this context. Now, the verb itself is kuru, which is to come. So here's where we jump into a little bit of the grammar. The verb form kuru means to come. If you want to negate that, you want to conjugate the verb to become negative, you could say konai. Konai means to not come. Now, what we're going to do is called the negative te form. So you take your verb and then you are doing a negative te conjugation. And so you have what we have here, ko nai, and the te form of this is de. So we actually will say konaide, which means please don't come. Which you can see, konai, not come. Please not come is konaide. So the de is really just adding a polite form of a command. So please don't come. And it can also mean without coming. Depending on how it's used, it can mean two different things, but in this context, it is please don't come. So konaide. So to kind of emphasize the point a little bit further, we're going to use the verb suru, which is to do. So suru, this is to do. If we use the negative version, the negative form of suru, it is shinai. So shinai, and again, you don't necessarily need to get caught up on the grammar for every single verb. Get used to just using the words. So if you want to know how to say like won't do, it is shinai. And you don't have to worry about the root verb being suru, which is to do. But in this case, because we can look at it, understand it, break it down, I can explain to you how it works here. So shinai means won't do. If we want to say like don't do or please don't do, just like we did with konaide, we would try to find the negative te version of shinai, which is shinaide. Shinaide, which means shinaide, please don't do. But like we said earlier, it could also mean without doing. So almost as if you're saying without doing something. And again, this is kind of contextual. You may have to spend some time getting used to it. You can combine different verbs to try to explain a concept by using these two different meanings. So konaide means please don't come. It can also mean without coming, and then you can follow on with a different verb or a different part of the sentence. If we use the two of these together, we can try to create a sentence like konaide suru. Konaide suru, which in this case would mean to do it without. So konaide means please don't come in casual voice. So moving on to the next word, very useful word, very commonly used word, a little bit more difficult than the one we started with, but again, if you're not thinking in terms of difficulty, just in terms of vocabulary, danjo. Danjo means men and women.
男女が同じ部屋で二人きり。男女が同じ部屋。男女。
You have the character for men, and then you've got the character for women. Danjo. Danjo. So here, again, character for men, and we already know the character for women. So men and women. Danjo. So the next word and the next phrase is actually a pretty interesting one because of the way that the Japanese language works and the way that you can reveal some cultural intricacies based on the phrases. It's almost an idiom, so to speak. So this is hara ga tatsu.
腹立つ もういい。腹立つ腹立つ腹立つ。
It's a good phrase to pick up on because of the idiomatic relationship it has with Japanese and how you start to see how some of the expressions can be based on the stomach and how a lot of what they talk about is based on sort of your gut feeling, right? So we have similar expressions in English, but you can actually see it manifest in the characters here as well. So you've got the character for stomach, which is hara. And just like we talked about before, we've got three radicals we've run into before. The moon or the flesh radical, we've got the sun one here, and we've got the winter radical. So all together, this is hara, which means stomach. Half of the character here actually means to repeat. So if you see that character out anywhere, it has the meaning to repeat something. The rest of the expression is hara ga tatsu. Now, tatsu, this is a fun one too. It means to stand. So you got tatsu. We almost have an equivalent expression in English, an idiom. My insides are boiling, right? Like my stomach is rising. The temperature in my stomach is rising. My hara ga tatsu. I'm very angry. So not too foreign to somebody that understands that idiom, but this is how you say it in Japanese. So a pretty common word, pretty useful word to run into. We actually looked at this character earlier today. So this is the character for big, right? We learned that earlier. In this case, it is pronounced tai. And hen here, we've got once again that winter radical. So big, winter. This is big, but it can also mean very. So if you think of the connotations of something big, it can be tough, it can be a lot, it can be strong, it can be very a lot, right? So all of these connotations associated with that character apply in Japanese too. And then hen means change. It also kind of means strange. It's also the same hen in hentai, so strange is sort of the connotation of that character. And together, taihen, something that is very big and very big change, or something that is very strange, can be terrible because change is scary, very sort of awful thing. So taihen can mean terrible or awful, sort of both of those things. But again, it's like an extreme version of that. So very, very awful. So this one's a little bit outside of the schema, but I do think that for some of us, those of us that believe marriage is a scary thing, or the emotions that all evolve around just what marriage is and all of the things that, you know, or even the opposite of love, or love can be scary sometimes too, right? But it is a very common theme in the show as well. The idea that fear is sort of the opposite of the trust and the love that people give. So the two halves of the coin, so to speak. You have kyōfu. Kyōfu. And once again, we've got that heart radical in there. Kyōfu. Again, the heart character in there, you can tell that this has something to do with emotions once again. So there's the fear that is evident in this character here. This character means fear, even by itself. The character over on the right, that heart radical, when you simplify it even further, you'll sometimes see it show up just like that. So that left radical is also the radical for heart in that character. Now this character over on the right, with the heart radical, you know that it has something to do with emotion as well. That character altogether actually means scary. So you have fear and scary in this compound kanji in this jukugo, which together just mean fear. So kyōfu is fear. So another character, and this one is very much related to xiaoyechin, or want to just run away. But very useful word that you'll find come up in a lot of different contexts. So tabi.
今日二人は3年にわたる恋の旅を終え恋の旅を終え恋の旅恋の旅恋の旅
And your romaji. Tabi just means a trip, like to go on a trip. But one very useful takeaway from this character here is that left half, that radical there, is actually a full standalone character as well. This is the character for ho, which means direction. Within trip, there is the character for direction, which maybe that's one way to help you remember it. You don't know where you're going on a trip unless you have a direction, or a trip should have some direction in it. Literally, it's in the character. However that helps you remember it. Just another takeaway from that character for a trip, which is tabi. So we talked a little bit in episode 1 about the different ways to say business. Here's another way to say business, and you'll see this is a pretty common use in Japanese as well. Kaisha.
バカおっしゃい。ナイスは一個人ではなく会社のトップブランドなの。会社のトップブランドなの。会社
And then sha, if you're familiar with your katakana, that is the katakana ne. And you've got the hiragana for this character, sha, kai, sha. If we break these down, this character here is the character to meet. It means to meet, or like meeting. And then sha here is the character for a company. It can also be the character for a shrine, which, again, we talked a little bit about Japanese work culture, some of the connotations of just how holy in status that companies and businesses have in Japanese society. So if you remember zangyo, that overtime work almost has a holy status, right? You're talking about business being at the same level and almost having an inherent association with religion almost. So shrine, company. In this case, kaisha just means company. It doesn't actually mean like a meeting place at a shrine, but the characters carry some of that weight still. And then the rest of this sentence, no toppu burando. That should be a pretty easy one. A bunch of katakana, and it is almost exactly as it sounds. No toppu burando. It's what the plants crave.
Brando's got what plants crave. It's got electrolytes.
Toppu brando, it just means top brand. So you can actually say that, and it is fully Japanese. People will understand you. So kaisha no toppu brando means the top brand of the company. We're writing down to the last phrase on the list here, and this one's a little bit of a doozy, but bear with me. We're going to break it down, and then you should be able to understand it pretty easily. So this one is related to episode 1, and I'm putting it in here again. It's a little bit outside of the schema for what we were going for with marriage, relationships, and love, but this ties back to episode 1, and it brings us full circle.
番組の時とはまるで別人だ。
お芝居はやめましょう。ナイスじゃないんだし。
気づいてたのか。
ナイスは
ビルから飛び降りた。ビルから飛び降りた。ビルから飛び降りた。ビルから飛び降りた。
ビルから飛び降りた。ビルから飛び降りた。So that's written out like this. So, biru means building. We're going to break this down systematically into 3 different sections so we can try to understand this sentence a little bit better. So we've got this first section here, this section, and then this last section. Breaking it down into these 3 parts. Remember, I don't want to get into grammar necessarily. I just want to work on pattern recognition, exposing yourself to different verb forms, and exposing yourself to the way things sound in Japanese. That's probably the most important thing. It's just that level of exposure, building the pattern recognition. but I'm breaking it down to help with some of that so you can pick up on these things a little bit faster. So tobi is actually a conjugated form of the root verb tobu, which is my absolute least favorite character in Japanese. So tobu means, that's hiragana, we want romaji. Tobu, it means to fly. Now, orita, similarly, is a conjugated version of the root verb oriru. And oriru means fall, or to fall. So this part here, the root version of this verb, you can see that this becomes ta in the sentence that we're examining. So this ta is actually the past tense conjugation. So you're taking the ru and turning it into a ta to become past tense. And we can actually see that in some of the other words we've learned already. So if you remember this character here, this is another ru verb. This is kuru. We saw this earlier today. Kuru means to come. If we wanted to say came, past tense of come, that would be kita. Same for suru, shita. So ta version of the verb is the past tense version of the verb. Now, kara, if you remember, we've used this and we've heard this earlier today as well. So if you remember this sentence, so this was kokoroから好き. So we learned earlier that kokoro means heart. And suki meant to like or to love something. And we said that kokoro kara suki meant to love it or to like it from your heart. So we know that this kara here means from. And so we have kara meaning from in this sentence. So kokoro kara, from. It is the same kara in this sentence. So if we assume that this here means from, then what we have is biru, building, kara, from, tobi, to fly, orita, past tense, fall. So to from building, fly and fall. Or to have fallen, fly fallen from a building. And we're going to break that down just a little bit more. So it's an interesting concept to say to fly fall, but if you think about what happens when a human being tries to jump off of a building, not nice, because nice should be able to fly, right? You sort of make this parabolic shape when you jump off of a platform. You almost fly, gravity takes over, and you fall. So that's actually in Japanese how you describe jumping off of something. You're flying and falling because of that parabolic shape. That might not actually be why they say it that way, but you can assume from the meaning of the expression that this is sort of how it works. So fly and then the fall part. So to tobi oriru is to jump off of a platform or to jump off of something and then proceed to fall off of that, right? So oriru sort of also has the meaning of descend. So you're jumping and descending. So jumping and descending, jumping and falling. So the sentence altogether means that we are falling from a building. So all of this here, the fly fall, really you can just consider it to mean fell because it is past tense. So to have fallen, and then kara is from, biru is building. So using it all together, if you remember this from episode 1, we looked at this character. This was jisatsu, and that was what nice did. Jisatsu means suicide. So nice committed jisatsu by biru kara tobi orita. Nice commit suicide by jumping off of a building, even though he could fly. So that is biru kara tobi orita. I told you this was going to be a long one, but we made it through, and I hope that all of that ends up creating a pretty solid foundation for your future learning. I don't expect you to remember all of this, but the more exposure you get, the better off you'll be, right? And you can always come back to this video, take a look at some of this to review, enhance your skills. You can continue to build upon everything that we're learning. But before I close out, I do want to take a look at some other things that popped up in the episode. Chiefly some Chinese characters that I want to make sure we understand are not Japanese. So in this scene here, we've got 3 characters that show up.
小月镜
Yue Ho. So this is fully Chinese, and it is simplified Chinese. And I think it's important to see the difference here. Again, this is probably a little bit too advanced for just learning a couple of words to try to like make sense of Japanese. But Yue Ho here means 1 month later. And it's a pretty nice and easy translation. 1, so here you have the character for 1, and then we know that this is the character for moon. Well, the Chinese and the Japanese back in the day, and to some degree today, still used the lunar calendar. So the moon represented the month cycle. It's like 29.5 day cycle. And that was what people used in the past for a very long time. So you still see that manifest in today's calendar system, the moon representing our standard Gregorian months. Now this character here, we'll get into a little bit further, but just know that it means later. So to translate this to Japanese so it makes more sense in Japanese, it would actually be I kagetsu go. And there's that winter radical that we keep talking about that keeps coming up. So you'll see it's similar, but a little bit structurally different. So we're going to ignore this character here and focus on the others. So this one here, we know, hopefully you know, if you've seen any amount of Japanese in the past. This is Ichi, which is 1. Ichi. So that's the character for 1. So this character here, we know is the character for moon. And it also means moon in Japanese. Because they use the lunar calendar, it also means month or month. But obviously it's month, which is because of their lunar calendar. And that's Getsu. We have Ichi, which is 1, Getsu, which is month. And then I told you we were going to come back to this character. This one here is the character for later or after, which in Japanese is go, or it's ato. In simplified Chinese in particular, this go character, this ato character, becomes simplified into this character. So they are actually the same in Chinese, but what you're seeing is a simplified version of that character. And what makes this annoying is that this character, simplified in Chinese, only means after. It is the simplified version of that character. But in Japanese, it still has another meaning. So that character, standalone in Japanese, actually means empress. Or like a queen, but I would say typically empress. And that is Kisaki. Maybe not too important to remember now, just to know that occasionally you're going to run into problems like this when you're looking at Chinese characters or Japanese characters and trying to figure out what they mean or how they're being used. If you know it's Chinese and you know what it means in Chinese, that might help, but it might also not help you understand what it means in Japanese. So you do need to understand both if you want to be able to pick apart the different writing systems. So the last thing that I want to take a look at is Xiaoyechin's shirt here. She has some characters written on her shirt which are simplified Chinese once again. So this is Jun, Shi, Xia, Ban. If we take a look at the compound characters, I guess, Jun Shi means like on time or timely. And then Xia Ban means to get off work. The meaning is to get off work on time, which I guess is on brand for Xiaoyechin's character, especially what she's going for now. She wants basically nothing to do with work, and she's more interested in getting off work on time. Translating that to Japanese, a yoji jukugo, that would be appropriate. It's not a real yoji jukugo, but we're going to use yoji jukugo to make it make sense. Yeah, so the Japanese equivalent would be teiji taisha, which is written like this. Teiji taisha. Sha. Similar concept here, similar meaning. You have fixed time, so teiji, fixed time. Taisha means to leave the office, so leaving the office on time. Teiji taisha. So we're only in the second episode, and we can see how many things are already starting to come back, and how much your foundational knowledge, no matter where you got it from and no matter where you learn it first, is starting to influence the things that you'll learn later and your ability to remember them. I know this was a super long one. Tried to keep it as short as I can, but there's so much quality content that you can learn just from taking a look at some of your favorite shows, stopping and trying to figure out, what are they saying? And I hope that this helps you piece some of it apart. I hope that this helps you in some way make sense of the language, or, learn a couple of keywords here and there. And we'll keep doing this and slowly build upon your understanding of the language. So I know this is already way over time, but this last segment, I want to just give you an idea of how far you've come just in these first 2 episodes. So here's a sample dialogue using most of the words that we've just picked up in the first 2 episodes. I don't know that this second episode had a lot of words in it, but if you work through the process and you remember a good amount of these, without understanding any Japanese grammar really, just see how much you're able to understand of this simple conversation that these 2 people are having between themselves.
夢を見た。
また？どんな夢？
私は女神だった。
かわいすぎる。
リンリンが出てきた。
自己満足なやつ？
うん。ハリボテのスマイル。
来ないでって言った？
言った。でも来た。
腹が立つね。
それで自殺したふりをした。
怖い夢だね。
でも千客万来、商売繁盛って言った。
なんで？
アニメ兄貴の YouTube ビデオを見たから。
I hope you're gaining a little bit of appreciation for the Japanese language and hopefully the culture too. Maybe the writing system. I do recommend that you guys go out and try to pick up hiragana and katakana where you can. Here's a really good video for hiragana. I think that they do a really good job of walking through how to actually write it way better than I'm showing you here. And here's another one for katakana for those of you that want to learn that as well. You should learn both writing systems. It is infinitely useful in your ability to pick up the kanji, to pick up the language, to understand the phonetics of the language. So thanks again for joining me on this journey, guys. This has been another installment of Review and Study with your Anime Aniki. それじゃ、次まで。